David Heurtel in for Elias. Well, unmarried parents could soon get a parental union status under a new Quebec bill that was tabled last week in the National Assembly by Justice Minister Simon Jolin Barrette. A lot of people are going to be affected by this new bill. It creates a whole new system to manage parents who are not legally married and have kids. So to help us make sense of this new regime and what it means for unwed parents, happy to speak with ANNE-FRANCE Goldwater, founder of Goldwater Dubé, one of Canada's leading family law firm. ANNE-FRANCE, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, David.
So, as maybe not a lot of listeners know, but you played a huge role in the origins of this story because you were part of that in the early stages of this case that went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada that sort of threw the entire regime of how unwed parents need to handle kids when they split up, right?
Correct. I was, along with my partner, Marie-Hélène Dubé, we were the lead attorneys in Superior Court and Court of Appeal in the Eric and Lola case, and we won in the Court of Appeal. Unfortunately, it was taken by somebody else to the Supreme Court, and although the majority of the judges held that the situation in Quebec is obviously discriminatory, obviously unconstitutional, one judge, our former Chief Justice Beverly McLaughlin, said, but Quebec's Quebec. Let's give them a last chance to remedy this ridiculous situation. You know, the specificity of Quebec. I always thought we were still part of Confederation. That disappointed me. But then again, I wasn't there to give them what for. But that being said, it only took 11 years for them to try to do something. And what they've ended up doing is something that's going to take away more rights than it gives.
So can you quickly give us a quick overview of what the bill proposes?
Here's what the bill proposes. It says, and it's not going to apply to anybody alive today. Nobody today is going to be protected. It's only
you mean no child, no unborn child is going to be protected.
No unborn child, yes, no existing union, and no born child. So the way it's going to work is like this. If you starting after the bill passes, if it passes in this form, if you hook up with somebody and you have a child with that person, right, and you are going to have, instead of a family patrimony, a parental union patrimony. So it means, once again, the law doesn't want to recognize you're really a family. You're not. You're sort of a family light. And what that means is you'd have to share a home, or the equity in a home that you acquire during the union, your furniture and your cars. No pension plans, no QPP, no RRSP, which means you have to politely die at 65 years of age. There will be no spousal support, no alimony. If there's no alimony, there's no provision for costs, which is the way by which mostly women are able to advance their rights in the courts, because the courts will give them money for their legal fees to be paid by their spouse. That's not going to exist either. They do say that you will be entitled to claim what they're calling a compensatory allowance, what you and I would call unjustified enrichment, all right? However, it's going to take away rights that are existing. This is one of these nuances that nobody wants to understand, because Simon Jolin Barrette decided he's going to make it based on quantum meruit. Quantum meruit is a fancy Latin expression to mean for what it's worth. So, you know, you're going to be, attributed an hourly wage? I mean, what if you're a spouse and you help your spouse, your partner in his business, and he makes millions? You're not going to get any piece of those millions, which is the state of the law today. Today, as we know from Supreme Court cases like Kerr and Baranoff, right? When a man and a woman, or a woman and a woman, a man and a man, they get together, with or without children, and one is staying at home while the other is working outside the home, or they work together on a family enterprise, that disadvantaged spouse gets the value of of the value survived, the value created that subsists, not on this new model. And it underscores how pathetic we are in Quebec, that up until today, and I hope still going forward, you had to go back to Roman law, right, of a couple of thousand years ago, if you're common law spouse, to claim unjustified enrichment. All right?
Right.
And now they're going to give some gift. What a poison chalice it is to say now you're going to have a right you already had, but we're going to make it harder to claim. You're going to get less. Then there's inheritance rights. You're going to have inheritance rights, automatic inheritance rights, if and only if the baby lives to be a year of age. So you got to make sure that your baby doesn't die at 11 months of age, because if so, you don't inherit. Also make sure, do not cause the demise of your spouse prior to the baby being a year of age. This is black humor, so to speak, sarcastic humor, because I don't know what the age of the child has to do with a right of inheritance. It seems to me if either spouse dies when the child is an infant, the other spouse is going to suffer a permanent economic harm, right, from the loss of the income of the other spouse and should be able to inherit. You shouldn't have to wait until the baby is a year old. It's not like you can give the baby back at the baby store. And now, worst of all, you're going to be allowed to opt out. And Quebec has an ignoble history with this because unlike the rest of North America, we divide the legal profession into lawyers and notaries. Lawyers know what litigation is, notaries do not. So in the days when people were automatically married in partnership of equest, notaries who were in charge of this would let women day in and day out opt out of equest and sign up for a separation as to property. And that's why back in the late 80s, the Quebec government created the family patrimony and said, you're not going to be able to opt out of the family patrimony because it was causing such devastating social harm to women and children. And now they're going back 50 years to adopt a system that didn't work for married couples. And I told that lovely young lad, Mr. Jolin Barrette, this is not going to work because you cannot leave it to notaries to safeguard the rights of women and children because we have no, and I'm not blaming the notaries, it's because Quebec has no domestic contracts legislation like everywhere else in Canada that says you need independent legal advice and full financial disclosure. Then the final thing this ridiculous bill gives is the right to claim your legal fees if your spouse engages in abusive proceedings. David, God help me. God help me. That already exists in corporate law, civil law, every law that exists. The concept of claiming damages for abusive process, we've had this since the legislator adopted Article 75.1 of the old Code of Civil Procedure, which goes back to sort of the Middle Ages. So why do they pretend they're giving something that already exists? And the last point I would add on that,
very quickly, please.
Very quickly, is that the idea that a common law wife could claim a provision for her legal fees in litigation involving children, I created that back in 1991, 1992 by pleading the issue before the Court of Appeal. And the Court of Appeal agreed with me. The late Justice Michel Proulx agreed with me and said, yes, if a woman has a child with a man and he comes and he's causing grief about custody or parental authority or child support, the woman should be able to claim a provision for cost to protect the interest of the child. So, thank you. Moichel Toivis, such gifts from the Quebec government, we don't need them. Am I really more powerful than the government of Quebec? It's a joke. I'm really not. But I'd like to think they'd be fancier than I am.
All right, Anne-France, thank you. So I knew this was going to be fascinating. I appreciate your insights as always. I guess you're going to go to the Parliamentary Commission and air your...
You think?
Yeah, I hope we get to hear from you more on this issue. Thank you so much.
I'll turn up with my favorite clients, my pit bulls and my deer. They'll defend me.
All right. Thank you for your time. Take care. Anne-France Goldwater, founder of Goldwater Dubé, one of Canada's leading family law firms. Clearly, this bill is raising a lot of questions. 3 classes of children. If you're married, you have one regime. If right now you already have a kid, this regime will not apply to you if you're unwed. And then when the bill actually comes into force, probably next year, then if you have a kid, that will have the regime. So you're going to have children that are going to have 3 different types of regimes. Definitely a lot to look into. This is a very, very controversial bill.